Recording.
Okay, so welcome everyone here in Zoom and online, and welcome to everyone out there who is watching this. My name is Lou Zweier, and I'm going to be the facilitator for the circle this morning. This is an empathy circle, the subject of which is the results of the 2018 U.S. midterm elections. These empathy circles are an activity of the Center for Building a Culture of Empathy and the Empathy Tent, which Edwin Rutsch, who's my co-facilitator, he's the founder of that, and I've been working with that group for a long time. Feels like a year maybe. So the empathy circle is so let's see, should I do a description of what it is, or should we do introductions first? Edwin?
Maybe introductions, just introduce ourselves. And yeah. Louis, I did mute you if there's a little bit of a background noise, so if you're not speaking, if you could mute yourself. So mute and unmute. So, and yeah, there you go.
Yeah, so, okay, so Edwin was requesting that you mute yourself when you're not speaking. That to help you. Okay. Yeah. So let's introduce ourselves. So your name and where you're from, and where you are on the political spectrum, just so we get to know each other a little bit. I'll start. I'm Lou Zweier. I'm in Northern California, in the North Bay. I'm politically, I'd say, practical. I'm a practical progressive. So I believe in progressive ideals, but I'm also very practical, and I'm interested in understanding the other side and recognize that the way that I feel about things isn't the way everyone does, and we all need to live together. So I don't think of compromise as a bad thing, and I think understanding the other side is important. But when I look at my values and what I think is a good thing to do, it usually aligns pretty well with progressive values.
Well, I could go. I'm Edwin Rutsch, and I'm in El Cerrito, which is just north of Berkeley in the San Francisco Bay Area. I grew up evangelical fundamentalist on the right, and did a lot of traveling and sort of moved to the political left. And over just more recently, I've really been seeing that both sides have sort of blocks to empathy. And I'm moving to the empathy position, sort of a third position of really wanting to build a culture of empathy and listen to all sides and support all sides and talking to each other. That's it. Thanks.
Anyone can go next. I can. You're muted. Louis.
I'm willing to go last since I came in last, so the rest of you.
Okay.
My name is Rick Feltington, and I'm here in the Hudson Valley region of New York State. Grew up in the New York region and had a father who was Democratic, and I would define myself as progressive. Or even a democratic socialist, although I don't really like to be defined also. And I value empathy quite a bit. And the reason why I'm here is because I believe that we have to connect and hear and honor each other fully. And I'm here to do the best I can with that. So that's it for me. I'm in.
My name's Evan Mcgurk. I grew up in Long Island, liberal. I still consider myself a liberal if I have to label myself, but kind of very much identify with the way that Edwin says it, sort of choosing empathy as the third path. I feel like an outcast in pretty much any circle when I say things like, I believe in unconditional empathy for all humans. That seems to get a lot of friction, and I believe that we can still practice responsibility and love without the notion of free will. Yeah, so that's what gets me feeling like I'm not welcome in a lot of places.
Okay, I'm Louis Griggs, and I just moved to Berkeley a month ago. So my wife and I are in one home instead of two for the past 4 years. I grew up in Minnesota. I was educated in New England at Amherst College. I'm a Stanford MBA. I'm a straight white male, 14th generation Mayflower, all English. And the reason I say that is that because of that background, I discovered that I'm the one who needs to heal my own ethnocentrism to be able to relate effectively and bridge across all the human diversity that we all are. And I also studied political theory. I went into politics. I dropped out twice because of what I perceived to be the lack of ethics. But because I love the purpose of democracy so much, I'm one of those very weird people who wants there to be voices from the far left, the far right, the right center, the left center, the center left, the center right, and the center. And the Supreme Court is supposed to be set up that way so that every vote is 5-4. I mean, I just love the diversity of all our perspectives, because by valuing it, it gives all of us, in my opinion, in my experience, the opportunity to benefit from each other's differences as gifts toward whatever our common goal is. Even if our only common goal is just peace and democracy, please, let's be it.
Okay, thank you, Louis. So I just want to thank everyone for being here. My heart is already like really full just listening to all of you. And I'm so grateful that you are willing to participate in this process of trying to create more civility, trying to create more understanding, trying to create a more empathic culture, which is the purpose of having these circles and putting them out there so that people can see, you know, what does it look like when people really listen to each other. So I just to explain a little bit about the circle, which, you know, some of you may understand already, but certainly for people watching this, just a brief description of what it is we're going to be doing, and also to, you know, just to reinforce it for the people who actually are participating. So, so an empathy circle, what we're going to be doing is it's a structured conversation where we take turns speaking and having someone in the circle reflect back what they're hearing, and that listening, that speaking and listening goes around the circle, so that there's mutuality in the listening. And so the way it works is one person will take a turn and they'll speak for whatever amount of time we agree to. Usually we start out with 3 minutes. 3 to 5 is a good time period. And the speaker speaks for the 3 minutes, and before they start speaking, they select someone in the circle to reflect back what they're saying. Everyone in the circle is listening to them, but one person has the job of reflecting back what they're hearing. And the person who's speaking should pause periodically so the person can reflect back. If they don't do that, I as facilitator will probably say, can you hang on for a second and let the person reflect back? Or the listener can also do that. Say, you know, can you hold on a second? Because I've taken in as much as I can. I want to reflect back what I've heard so far. And particularly if the stuff is charged, you know, if there's a little bit of charge on it, the reflecting should happen more frequently, because it's hard to hang on to things when you're feeling charged about it. At the end of the person's time, and Edwin will be keeping the time, there'll be a signal. So he's got a visual signal he's going to give there. When the person's time is up, you finish up what you're saying. You know, you don't have to stop instantly, but, you know, finish up what you're saying, and then the final reflection happens. And then if you feel heard, you say, you know, yes, I feel heard. You know, if the reflection that comes back to you, you don't feel heard, or you only feel partially heard, you can say that. It's okay to say, you know, that wasn't quite it. This is what was important. Or, you know, you got this piece of it, but this other piece, you know, I want to be heard for that. So when you're feeling heard or heard enough, you can say, you know, yeah, thank you, I feel heard. And then the listener, the person who was the reflector, becomes the speaker, and they select someone else in the circle who hasn't been a reflector yet to reflect back. And so because the speaker is picking a different person each time, that hasn't reflected yet, then the listening and the speaking move around the circle, with some mutuality. Let's see, anything else I want to say? When you are the reflector, your job is to really just reflect back your understanding of what the person is saying. And it's to let them know that they've been heard and that they're understood. And so you're really reflecting back. Again, you're not responding to what they're saying, answering it, objecting to it, or evaluating it, or any of that. You're just reflecting back what you understand that they're saying, so that they feel heard. Let's see. Anything else I'm leaving out, Edwin?
I think that's it. Best just to get started, huh?
Yeah. So let's get started. I'll be the first reflector, just to demonstrate what reflecting is. And who would like to be the first speaker?
Okay, I suggest Edwin be the first speaker, since therefore we can have you both model exactly what you like this to be.
Actually, no. So I'm gonna say no to that, because Edwin's job actually is so Edwin, we have a decision to make about whether you're going to be in the circle or not. Do you want to be, Edwin?
I could be, but it's mainly about the others. I'm just co-facilitating, which is being support, taking notes.
Right.
But I could, if someone wants to speak to me, that's fine. Or
okay.
Or have.
Yeah. So I'd like to start with one of the three of you, if that's okay. If someone's willing to start first. And remember, so the topic that we're talking about is, whatever's up for you, whatever you're thinking, feeling, whatever about the results of the midterm, the U.S. 2008 midterm elections, which just happened.
I'm willing to start.
Okay. So, and I'll listen to you, Rick.
Okay. For me, it's kind of a mild sense of relief. Maybe even a little more than mild, because I kind of thought it was either going to be like a high that I might have felt, or some real low, or not only that I would feel, but that I'd have to deal with in the people around me. Like if there wasn't some kind of clear shift or response, I think myself and a lot of people I know would be in deep depression, I think. And so that didn't happen. So I feel a sense of relief that there was some kind of a check on power,
So let me just reflect back. So what I'm hearing is you were a little worried going into the midterm elections because people had a lot of strong feelings about it, including you, and that you're feeling some relief now because you were worried that the outcome might be very much not what you wanted, and so people would be depressed or angry, or there would be a very large negative emotional reaction to it, and so you're feeling some relief about that. Is that right?
Yeah, that is right.
Okay. So is there more you want to say?
Let me see. I guess for me, there's a feeling like things are going in a good direction, but at the same time, it could get more intense. There could be some more. It could go bad before it goes good, and or both at the same time. So I'm just trying to breathe and do the best I can with things.
So you're happy about the outcome of the election and about what's happened since, but you're interested to see what's going to happen now, and you're feeling a little uncertain about it.
Yeah, basically. I mean, I feel fine, but as we're talking about it, as I'm focusing on it, like I have the violent outbursts that happen in my mind, and of course I don't want to see more of that. And
so you're wondering if there's going to be, some kind of violent reaction, or someone who's unhappy with the outcome of the election is going to create some kind of conflict, and you're thinking about that.
Yeah, I mean, not directly because of the outcome of the election, but it's just it's a trend that's happening, and it's it's real for some people. and who knows who it will be, there's violence going on until we change it.
So the recent acts of violence that have been in the news and the larger arc of violence that has been happening, the growing violence, you're kind of wondering now what's going to happen with that, if it's going to get worse or what.
Yeah, it's somewhere in the backdrop of my mind as we talk about these things.
Yeah. It's hard not to think about that or have that in the back of your mind.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you. I feel heard.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. So my turn then, and I will ask Louis, will you listen to me? Okay.
I will.
Okay. Let's see, the outcome of the midterm elections. So I know many people who worked very hard to try to help create a blue wave to flip the House and the Senate, and spent many, many hours working very hard on getting out the vote. So I feel I'm happy. A lot of that happened. And there's been kind of a slow recognition of that. It wasn't as dramatic on the election night as it might have been. And there were people around me who were expressing disappointment that it wasn't as big. But the more I looked at the results and the more the results have trickled in, and some are still coming in, there's a very big shift. And I was very happy to see that the number of people that voted, percentage of people that voted, even on both sides, I'm just happy that happened. I think more participation is good. And I'm fine that it wasn't just, let's say, on one side, that both the Democratic and the Republican turnout was high. I think that's good. I'll stop there.
Okay, so what I heard, which I hope is accurate, is that you, from your perspective, have not only the perspective of being a progressive and worked very hard hoping that ideally both the House and the Senate would switch, and you also felt very positive about the increase in voting that did take place on both sides, and that while there was a shift of a blue wave, since it was only about half as big a wave as it often is in the midterms. You didn't say those words, but I know you know that. So it was like not as big as you hoped it would be. And there's some disappointment that the right didn't switch. The Senate didn't switch. But nevertheless, you feel some satisfaction that at least there were more voters and there was a switch and there's now more of a balance. That's the essence of what I heard.
I actually personally never expected the Senate to switch. There were people around me who were disappointed by that. I didn't think that would happen. Although I'm really happy that at least the House switched, and it would have been great if the Senate switched too, just to have more of a check on what's been happening in the executive branch, which I think is totally not what I want to see. And so I'm very happy that there'll be a check on many of the things that the administration's trying to do.
So should I respond? Should I reflect that I heard that also?
Please.
That at least, even though you might have wished there was more, especially so that if both sides of both Senate and House switched, that at least the executive branch would be more up against more than it will be. But at least there's some satisfaction still that there was a switch at all. So even though you're not as happy as you would have been, you accept what is, and you sound already, and I feel already that you're so good at just accepting what is and noticing the difference between what is and what you might wish, that I really like how balanced you are.
Yeah.
That last sentence wasn't a reflection of what you said. It was my reflection of what I'm experiencing. So I thank you for being you.
Okay. So my time's up, Edwin? Is that right? Yeah, 3 minutes. Okay. So I had something more I wanted to say, but I'll wait for the next time around. So thank you. I feel fully heard.
So then if we're supposed to go in order, that means it's my turn to speak, and do I choose the listener, or does the listener choose himself? Okay.
No, the speaker chooses the listener.
Well,
but we ask that you choose someone who has not spoken.
I was just going to say, only that means Evan, you're on, if you're willing and able to listen to me.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So, two things. One, because I have been a never Trumper since all 19 of those potential Republicans stood up there and he opened his mouth, I happen to be, as much as a progressive liberal Republican as I am, for reasons maybe we'll have time to get into, I'm appalled to have such a narcissistic, egotistical asshole, whether he's on the right, left, or center. It just is appalling to me. And there are too many men on this earth like that. It just very much disappoints me that one of them is our president. Even with the 10 to 30% of his political perspectives I might support, I would still rather have an ethical, balanced person in there with his perspectives or her perspectives, because ethics and human spirit come number one to me.
So why don't you pause there and let him reflect?
Yeah, so I'll pause there and see if that made any sense.
Yeah, for sure. So I think the essence of the first part you said was that you're appalled with how much of an asshole Trump is and how narcissistic his tendencies seem to be. And even if you agree with, a portion of his, the policies that he at least, proclaims to support, that, you'd much rather have somebody who has, better ethics, in the presidency.
Exactly. I am heard. And secondly, I actually, because I like balance, I actually am pleased that the House switched and pleased that the Senate did not switch, because I want them to be forced to, like politicians used to naturally feel comfortable. I want them to be forced to realize nothing at all will happen unless they have to listen to each other and try to compromise. I'm hoping that's possible. It is possible, as both Nancy and even Trump said. Forget about the energy with which he said it, but at least the content of what he and Nancy both said was, maybe there's a hope that we can at least do the things we agree upon, and get them done. And that's what I hope will happen. I fear, of course, that if the left now, if the House now chooses to do to him what the Republican House did 4 years ago to Obama, then we're still going to get almost nothing done. So whether it's right or left, I was as appalled, to use the word intentionally, with what the Republicans did to Obama after their midterm, as I am now afraid of what the Democrats will do, at least to the right now.
Yeah.
Okay. Those are my words.
Yeah, there's a lot there. Let me try and get that. So it sounded like you were almost satisfied in a sense with the balance that's coming back, even if it's not, a blue dominance. It's at least a balance where, you're hoping people will be forced to listen to each other within that balance, so that we can start learning to listen and make progress. But you have this fear that with a blue shift in the House, that they'll just do what Republicans did to Obama. And I assume what you mean by that is sort of holding things back just for the sake of waiting.
Yeah, exactly. Just for the sake of trying to defeat the opponent instead of co-create with the opponent. Those are my words. Thank you.
You feel heard?
I am heard. Thank you.
Cool. I will select, I guess we can go back to Rick if you're down. Cool. I do feel a sense of relief. There's a part of me that feels a sense of relief when there's a blue uptick in our representation out there. And there's also a sense of fear relating back to the empathy topic. There was an article I read about how it was comparing America to sort of this like movie like dystopia where I'll try not to make this too complex to reflect, where we've got sort of like the people in the high towers on the left and right of the country, and we have like the struggling working class in the middle. And my fear is that, you know, as if there's an increase in sort of more liberal representation, that we might see more violence in the news. Maybe I'll pause there.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So what I heard first is I heard you say there's some mild relief in the uptick in the blue representation. That was the first part I heard. And then you are also addressing a fear that was represented in this dystopian view of the two different parties, the two towers, I guess the elites of each party, while the other people are struggling. And I think you were talking about some fear of some violence. Did I get that right, or did I kind of?
Pretty close. More so that the if you would call it the elitists, more so the elitists in this example were being described as like New York and California.
Okay.
You know, where there's more of the liberal representation, and that the middle of the country is like the struggling working class that the elitists don't empathize with.
Okay. I got you. So the uptick in the blue liberal representation could affect the people in the middle of the country who are not represented in a negative way. Right.
Yeah. And I have fear around the sort of almost gamification of politics. Like, blue wins, screw them, let's get our policies enacted. Obviously, that's, you know, a bill is a slow moving entity that has to be, you know, tweaked by both sides and to get approval. But yeah, it's a feeling that sort of in the polarization of the country, I guess, something like that. There's a lot there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The way I hear it or interpret what you're saying is, I heard the word gamification, and it sounds like you're talking about how it's rah, rah, rah one side and rah, rah, rah the other side, and how that just isn't good. doesn't make you feel good to see that. That's what I got from that. Is that sort of accurate?
Yeah, I just want more empathy in the world. That's really, I think, the last thing I'll add to it.
I hear you. You're longing for empathy to spread its wings in the world, and yes, I agree, and I thank you for that, for expressing that.
Yeah, awesome. I feel fully heard. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Rick, you're free to choose anyone. Everyone's listened once, so it's completely open in terms of what direction you want to go.
Okay. Are we basically still staying on the same topic?
Sure. Although you can, if things have been, you know, or whatever's coming up in you is fine. Yeah, people can talk about whatever they want.
Okay. Okay. Louis, would you be willing to reflect?
Of course, I will do my best.
Um, I'm not sure what to sort of say right now. I'm sort of processing what's going on. I think that's where my body is right now. It felt good to hear Evan express some things that resonate with me in my heart, to just hear it said that, you know, this longing for empathy to kind of overcome this, what he called gamification. Yeah, I feel like that is one of the things that can upset me with whatever side it is. It's like, you know, a lot of people seem to get stuck in the idea of the side they're on, and it messes up a lot of things, a lot of communication that could happen. And I'm aware of that. So I'll pause there.
Great. I wanted to ask permission. May I please thank you and mirror back the pleasure I feel that to discover that more important than someone else.
I'm going to interrupt there. So, Louis, your job is just to reflect back what you heard him say?
I think I'm all right. I'm trying to do that.
Doing? Okay, all right.
I'm trying to reflect back with pleasure.
Okay.
Not just objectivity, but with pleasure, that I feel that it's more important to you to feel empathy and collaboration and inclusion than it is to have the other person agree with have your righteousness or their righteousness be in conflict. So I really thank you for that, and that's what I hear. So I want to hear more. Yes.
I mean, and also just to be able to go deeper with people, because it's good to start on this level of what's happening in governance and how we view it and all that. But to understand, like even for me to understand your perspective, for example, I think I would have to know more about you, you know, and what informed your views. And I mean, I've heard a bit, but I'm just aware of that as a way to really connect to people. For me, that's what's helpful, more so than sometimes specific views on governance. If that does that make sense?
It feels so clear to me and so enjoyed by me that I hear you saying that what's most important to you is to learn to understand and feel and empathize with the difference, the deep of not only that person's perspective, but the source of it, how they got there. I mean, you're less interested in the intellectual left brain, you know, understanding of it, much less conflict between the two. And I really hear you. I hope that you feel heard, because I just really value that one feels that way. I hope the more we do conversations like this, the more we can each enhance others' comfort being just like that. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
You feel heard?
I feel heard. I'd love to add one more thing if I can, just because.
Yes, go ahead.
I feel heard, and it feels good. I get tingles in my body. I just want to add that, it's like if someone has a different view than me, right, on something, it could bring up like, you know, but if I understand why that person has that view, then I'm human and I could connect much easier. And that's what I wanted to add, which I probably already said.
What I hear is that you have said, again, really well what you feel, which is that it's more important to you to feel who that person is and how they got to their perspective,
yes,
than to understand only intellectually, much less conflict with their perspective. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I get to go next. So to pick somebody new, we're supposed to keep Edwin out, right? So I guess
you can select me if you want. If it's kind of more about you all, but you can.
Yes, just because I want the diversity of all of us. Edwin, will you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So what I love about these and what I love about this is precisely this process of feeling heard without judgment of our different perspectives. So it makes me feel safe to say two different examples, just to be brief. One is the way in which I love being as far left on all human rights issues as I feel, is that we really are all one and uniquely different. And the only way I can safely be exactly who I am is for you to feel as safe to be exactly who you are. And for each of us to learn from those differences toward whatever common goal we have. Okay? That is really simple summary, but I love being that left, if you will. And I hate calling it left, because to me it should just be true for all of us. And, well, go ahead, summarize that.
Okay, so what I'm hearing there is that it was a little bit of echo, kind of distracted. Is that it feels safe to to see people who they are, and you're seeing that as being on the left. But then you're even saying that maybe it's not just the left; it's just kind of a human trait, and that being able to see people sort of their common humanity, and there's a certain safety in this type of discussion.
Absolutely, thank you. I feel heard, and I hope I didn't distract you by handing my keys to my son to drive my car away.
No, so, you've got a minute and a half. Is there more?
Yes. So then on the so-called right side, although I don't like these things being called right and left, one of the historical ways in which I like this being a republic, okay, and that Republican, is that the Electoral College, in my opinion, in my experience, was precisely so that, as was said earlier, the election is not won every time by we progressives between DC and Boston and between San Diego and and Seattle. That's exactly what just happened, would have happened. The popular vote ended up being plus Hillary because we progressives did that. And the entire rest of the country, if it weren't for the Electoral College, would not have felt as heard. And worldwide, we're noticing this wasn't, this was that middle part not being heard, and it's true in Europe and it's true all over the world. So I love that that was said, and for me, that's why the Electoral College needs to exist, and that's a part of my republicanism instead of my one vote counts for all.
Oh, okay, so your republicanism, so the conservative side, the Republican side, values the Electoral College, because the Electoral College is giving more of a voice to others. That instead of it being dominated by progressives on the left and right coast, that this is given a voice to those more in the middle, and you value that just valuing that everyone has more of a voice. And that's what the Electoral College is set up for.
Exactly. And it's not just that I understand that intellectually because I studied it. I grew up in Minnesota. So I'm part Midwestern, and I lived on the East Coast 10 years, so I'm progressive New Englander, and I lived on the West Coast 42 years to give away my way. So I'm bi-coastal and Midwestern, and I know all parts of myself, and I like noticing all parts of everybody I meet.
Okay, so in terms of this left-right, you've been lived in the different areas, so you sort of resonate with each of those, and you see that in everyone else too. It's like you can connect with everyone, be it in the left or the center or the right, and so that sense of connection with everyone.
Yes, I feel heard, and we have just modeled why I love doing diversity training, because I not only love hearing and seeing, I love feeling seen and heard.
So and you're kind of valuing this, that you're being seen and heard for what you're just expressing, and that kind of ties in with the diversity training that you do.
Absolutely. And I enjoy seeing and hearing as much. Luckily, I'm not so narcissistic that I only want to be heard and seen. I love the mutual process. Mm-hmm. I learn from each of you as much as, and take what you can use and leave the rest is a phrase I love. I love learning what I can take from each of you, and I hope there's something we each take from me and from every one of us.
So really valuing the mutuality of this and the learning from each other. And yeah.
Right.
Okay. I guess I'll speak to Lou.
Okay.
Yeah, let's see what's up for me on the topic. I'll hit the stopwatch. I'm doing a couple of things here. Yeah, as I've gotten more into the political world, I'm starting to see the lack of empathy on both sides more. Like I sort of identified as, progressive, and was trying to support progressive Democrats and so forth. And then when the right wing came out to Berkeley, and they were going to have a rally there, I reached out to the rally organizer and said, "Oh, would you like to do an empathy circle with someone on the left?" And she said, "Sure, I'll do it." And then I reached out to, tried to reach out to the 30 progressive organizations that were counter demonstrating this. It was like right after Charlottesville, and nobody would talk to her. I mean, they just totally did not want to talk to her. There was a progressive church. I'll let you just go catch.
So, so you're really charged about the fact that in our current climate, people on the right seem much more willing to dialogue than people on the left, and that is frustrating to you, and it's surprising to you, maybe even shocking, because you have been kind of a progressive, and you think that one of the progressive values is to be open, and you've just been really surprised and frustrated that people on the left have not been willing to engage in dialogue.
And there was even a progressive church that I reached out specifically to the person who was organizing this counter demonstration. Said, "Hey, would you like to talk to this person on the right who's actually coming?" And she said, "No, I'm too busy." it's like they're not too busy to go rally 50 or 100 people in her little group to counter demonstrate, but they're too busy to even talk to the person on the other side who's willing to do an empathy circle like we're doing right now. So it's really kind of shocked me. It's kind of whoa. It's like the left is not kind of what I thought, even though I sort of felt the lack of empathy. So it's, so it was like a real, sort of, something I was dealing with.
So even a church, even a progressive church, you would think they would be the most open to dialoguing.
Yeah.
And people who organize rallies on the left who are, so these are people who want to have something to say. They're rallying, so they have something to say. They were not willing to make time to dialogue. They're putting their energy into counter demonstrating, but they're not willing to put energy and time into dialoguing, and that's shocking and disappointing to you. It sounds like.
And not my response is just saying, oh, they really need a third space, the empathy space, which is everybody needs empathy. The left seems to be needing empathy. The right seems to be needing empathy. And so you need sort of this third space to be able to offer it to both sides and then to advocate for them. So instead of being in one side, to sort of be out in an empathic space is kind of how I'm seeing it.
So this seeing this kind of unwillingness to dialogue, or the polarization, is really part of what made you want to try to create a third space that people could be invited into from both sides to create dialogue, because you weren't seeing it happening.
Yeah, I feel heard. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, let's see. So many things have come to mind. Which one to talk about? So I need to pick someone. So I'll do Evan. Would you listen to me? Thank you. So I think what I feel most strongly about is the thing of extremism. So extremism on the left and extremism on the right. That's what I have trouble with. And that's what I think is not working very well. And by extremism, I mean people on different sides demonizing each other. So not just having differences of opinion or different ways that they look at things, but actually, you know, attacking the other side by saying that they are bad people, they're not patriots, just demonizing and assigning all kinds of very nefarious and evil intent. I think that creates disconnection, and I think that is a big part of the problem with polarization, is the way people express themselves includes a lot of demonizing, and that happens, unfortunately, that happens on both sides.
Yeah, so what troubles you maybe even the most about this situation now is extremism, and on both sides. And it seems like you're defining that as the demonization of the other. And that could be as simple as saying, you know, your side is bad, or, you know, and claiming that the other side has evil intent.
Yeah. I also think that something that I see that happens a lot is people take, and this happens both on the left and on the right, people take something that has a grain of truth to it. And I really think like every position has a little grain of truth to it, and then they distort that terribly. Like a good example would be something like, you know, on the left, well, I can think of one on the right first. So on the right, the idea that, you know, too much government assistance or the wrong kind of government assistance can lead to dependency, and like programs that are supposed to help people actually not helping them. You know, so there is truth that happens sometimes, but then to take that and say, well, you know, government, we shouldn't have government, and there's no place for government, and that kind of thing never happens in the private sector. Like if you privatize things, you know, everything will be fine. Like the private sector never makes mistakes or is wasteful or makes bad decisions, which is, you know, that's not true. So I'll stop there.
Yeah. So you're basically saying, you know, sometimes people on the left or the right, you just happen to have an example on the right, will take something that has like this little grain of truth to it, but then use that to say, you know, make this overarching generalization. Like the example you gave was, you know, showing like a tiny example where government assistance actually hurt, you know, in some way, the chances for people to get help. And using that to say, you know, that government assistance is always bad, you know, seems maybe even outlandish to you. And that could be done on both sides, like you mentioned. Yeah, you know, as if the private sector never, you know, has problems.
Right. Right. Thank you. And I guess my time is up, unfortunately. So I want to advocate for longer terms starting in the next round. Let's go to 5 minutes instead of 3 minutes. So thank you. I feel fully heard.
Awesome. 5 minutes starting now, or?
No, we need to complete the 3 minute round, and then, yeah.
Oh, shucks. Okay. So.
Well, how does everyone feel? You want to switch to 5 minutes now? How many people want to do that? I'm okay with that if others want to. Okay.
I'm also okay with going around till everybody's done the same number of 3, but I didn't count. So if you two don't know, then we might as well switch.
Let's just switch to 5. I'm happy switching to 5.
Okay. Man, there's been a lot of good stuff. Maybe I need a second. It's hard to practice listening.
Don't you first have to pick who you want to be heard?
Oh, yes.
Or, while we did this, you two who run this tell me, wouldn't it sometimes help if each of the others of us had a comment in response, as long as it isn't in conflict, as long as it's, what I hear is, but you decide if it's ever useful or not.
Yeah, I think not. I mean, the purpose of this really is just for the speaker to feel heard, not necessarily. In other words, the needs of the listener are not. That's not what's we're trying to do. So as long as the speaker feels heard by the reflector, that's what's important. Now, if the speaker is having trouble feeling heard, and the reflector, let's say, made 2 or 3 attempts and it was not happening, then I would come in as a facilitator and I would try to reflect it back so they felt heard. But So
Well, I
even,
want you to know, I feel not only heard, I feel caught appropriately. Thank you.
okay. Yeah, so well, actually, since you asked that, I want to make a comment because some of your reflections included a little bit of celebrating what the person was saying or joining in with them. And that's, I understand the desire to do that, and that it isn't part of what we're doing, because it represents a little bit of evaluation, which we're trying to stay away from. Yeah. And certainly when it's your turn to speak, then you could say anything you want. So if you want to appreciate the person then or whatever, then absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so Evan, who would you like to reflect you back?
I will select Lewis.
Okay.
So I kind of going off of the point that Lou made with these, taking these single grains of truth and trying to use that as if to say, that their side is completely right now. It pains me that we've at least the discourse that we witness a lot, especially on social media, since that now seems to be the way that the country disconnects, is so unscientific and unconstructive, in my opinion, and that people seem to. I wonder if people, when they post a meme like that or whatever it is, if they think that they're convincing people that disagree with them. I see this trend as like sort of a mic drop, as if it's going to convince someone that disagrees with them. Maybe I'll pause there.
That's great. So what I hear is that, sort of triggered by what Lou had said, you also feel frustrated by the reality that what social media is causing is a little bit more of everybody hanging on to their own perspective and their own righteousness, and that the impact maybe is, instead of them thinking that it's going to change the opinion of others, all it's really doing is having each of us get a little more righteously stuck in our own perspective, and that's feeling dysfunctional to you. Is that close to accurate?
Yeah, and maybe not even stuck. If I could tweak the end of that, maybe not even stuck, but I actually value what I think it's doing for people, which is that it's a form of venting. I think that when we get home from our hard days, I think social media is a way to vent, and sort of a mic drop feels good, just as slamming a door on someone feels good. And I think it's important to express anger however it comes out, as long as, at least in my life, as long as I identify when I'm venting and when I'm trying to be constructive.
Interesting. So I hear that the positive side is, as opposed to just the downside of it, is that at least it's an opportunity for personal expression. And that's a relief for each to be able to feel safe to personally express, just like it's critical to feel and express anger as long as it doesn't hurt the other, And so there's an upside to that, even though there's also a cost to it. I hear that.
Yeah, I feel fully heard. Thank you.
Okay. That's 3 minutes. You have 2 more.
Do you have
that
more minutes?
so I'm good to go.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, you don't have to use your full time. But...
Okay, great. So then, who has not heard me? Just for the diversity, Rick, will you hear me? So I also feel pleasantly freed to now express another feelings that I have. And one of the ones that really irritates me, where I don't like even the labels of left and right, because I can't tell you which part of me, even though you may think it sounds left, it feels right. It feels correctly right to me, or vice versa. But one example is, whereas to keep it oversimplified, whereas we all seem to agree that we need to have cars registered and driver's licenses to prove we know how to use them, and whereas we all seem to feel that wherever we travel in the world, it's appropriate that we have a passport, and we all seem to feel, at least to accept, that we have not only birth certificates, but social security numbers, it really irritates me that I experience the left, let's say, to oversimplify it, they want guns registered but not immigrants. Or it irritates me that the right wants immigrants registered but not guns. And I do not consider it right or left. I think every single gun should be registered and we should be trained how to use it just like a car. And I think every immigrant should come in legally and all have a number and all have, and thereby be a legal part of our society. And I don't understand at all why either the right or the left fight the other on those two where there's such conflict. It makes no sense to me. If we're all here together for small d democracy and human diversity and safety and staying in the right lane and stopping at stop signs, why do they have so much difficulty coming together on those two? There.
Okay. I feel like I heard you. I feel like I heard you, but I'm going to do my best to reflect back. I'm not sure that I could get it, but I think what you're saying, you're talking about your frustration with the quote left and the quote right on things that it would seem they could agree on in a way, but can't.
Totally.
And the example that stood out the most was the guns versus like immigration.
Yeah.
Like the left thinks you should register guns,
Right.
but not the immigrants, and the right the opposite. And
Right.
it's almost like bewilderment, I think, it's like, and frustration is what
Yeah.
I think I'm hearing.
Why can't they all be registered?
Right. Right.
I definitely feel heard. Thank you.
Amen.
And another one of my own peeves I said earlier is that since I studied like every word of the Federalist Papers and our whole democracy, and I value it, whereas I love the 2 years, 4 years, 6 years, 8 years switching and being elected, you know what I mean? That helps create the balance. But the one that I think is so perfect is the Supreme Court. It absolutely needs to have, in my opinion, far right, far left, right, center, center, right, center, left, and center. And I almost want every vote to be 5-4 because its purpose is not to create the law. Here's where I sound conservative. Its purpose is to interpret whatever just happened as it should be decided based upon the current law. That sounds conservative. Legislative branch is supposed to change the law. The courts are supposed to decide if the law has just been broken or not. And I want balance for that. So I actually like that Trump's first nominee matched the person who had left. I don't like that the second one also matched the person on the far right who had left first and didn't match the centrist who had left. I really want the court to be balanced, whichever side has lost its balance. That's another one of my passions.
Mm-hmm. So what I hear is that you value balance specifically in the Supreme Court, and you're tying it to the roots of the Federalist Papers, and wanting balance so that it's law is not made but interpreted according to the various perspectives that are out there.
Right.
I think that was the gist.
Totally accurate. Thank you. I feel very heard.
Cool.
So I'm done and you get to speak.
Okay. Lou, would you be willing to listen?
Yes.
Okay. What arose for me that I'd like to share is I think along my journey of getting involved politically, I've been, more on the left than the center left, right? And I've felt the elbow a number of times, like the elbow of people who are more in power and can shut up those who, I won't get too far into it, but I felt that. So I value integrity. Okay, that's another piece. I value integrity a lot. So I don't like any politician who will speak one thing and do another. That sort of is irritating to me. So I'll pause there, and then.
What I think what I heard you say is, you're on the left, and you have being on the left, you have felt what you described as the elbow of the maybe just the left, the not so left, or the center left, or the center, which tends to be more empowered. You have felt constrained by them, or maybe told. I guess the elbow means told, like, be quiet, or move over, something like that. You have felt that. And then you were also just saying that integrity is really important to you, that, a person should walk their talk, and that a politician who says one thing and does another thing, that you have a lot of problem with that.
Yes, thank you. And so integrity and process, I value process very much. And so, and this maybe ties also to this tribalism that we can experience when a group just feels they're part of this group, and it seems like they can't see what's bad about that group, and they're just pointing the finger at the other group. And I feel like, to me, that happened with Hillary Clinton, and it just kind of is something that hasn't been discussed with clarity, in my opinion, that the process was distorted in the Democratic primary. And it was just like, well, either people don't believe it happened, or they just want to sweep it under the rug, but like, in my perspective, is that it was fraudulent, and that's not okay. It's not okay for the Democratic primary to be fraudulent, or any primary to be fraudulent. There has to be a process, and we all have to feel that's a real process that we can believe in, and so I feel like that hasn't been addressed, and it's something that kind of bothers me still.
So integrity and process, and integrity in the process, political process, is really important to you. And you feel that, the process that happened in the 2016 election on the Democratic side, on the left side, where, Bernie was not, in your view, not given a fair process, that was he was treated unfairly, and that you don't feel like that's ever really been acknowledged or dealt with, and that nobody's kind of talking about it. It's just, you feel like it's kind of swept under the rug, and that really makes you uncomfortable. Did I get that right?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Is there more you want to say about it?
Thank you. That's good. I feel heard. Thank you.
Okay. So let's see. So Edwin, would you listen to me?
Okay.
So a couple things for me. One is this thing about tribalism and about power over, what I would call power over versus a power with perspective. And I think tribalism and extremism really comes out of a perspective that says, a power over perspective where, the way I solve problems is I amass power, and then I use my power to get what I want. And then, and I need to keep that power so that I can be in control and get what I want. And I think that is part of the problem in our society, and part of the problem in our politics is that there's a very much a power over mentality. And I see that both on the right and the left, where people are, okay, how can we eliminate these people or get them out of power, and how can we get enough power so that we can just do whatever we want? I mean, that was kind of the frightening thing about the current administration, having the Senate and the House, and because there's no check on their power. They can just do whatever they want. And I would really like to see more of a power with mentality, which means I accept that you're different than me. I want to understand your differences, and I accept that I'm not going to get everything that I want. I have a perspective, and I have something that I think is a good idea, but I also have to accept that you have things that you want, and you have good ideas too, and we need to meet somewhere in the middle, and compromise is part of that.
So you're seeing one of the problems in society, or in our society, is this power over dynamic, and the different political groups are just trying to have power over the other, and you see a different path of power with that that people work together with sort of a shared power, and that's sort of a positive direction you see, versus this power over that the parties are kind of stuck in.
Yes, thank you. And related to that, Rick talked a little bit before about the Electoral College, and there are a number of mechanisms in our government, that was part of the design of the system, so that you couldn't have the tyranny of the majority, which means, just because I'm in the majority, we get whatever we want, So there are mechanisms in the Senate, there are mechanisms like the Electoral College and the two senators from each state, which are all designed, and like in the Senate, the filibuster rule and different rules that are all designed to make it so that the minority also has some power, structural power that they can assert, so that the majority can't just go over them. And those structures have eroded. Some of them have eroded because they changed the rules, like in the Senate, they changed the rules for approving judges and stuff like that. And the other thing is that I was reading an excellent article in the New York Times this morning about how the demographics of the country have changed. And so there's much more population in the urban centers and in the coasts. And so the scale at which, like the two senators from each state was intended to give each state a little bit of power. But because the population has grown so lopsided, the scale of that power relative to the whole is like out of whack. Like in Montana, two senators represent 4 million people, and in California, two senators represent 40 million people. And so that the minority now has too much power, it's kind of out of balance. And so I think that's the thing that needs to be looked at too, how our institutions might need to be modified to adjust that.
Mm-hmm. So sort of building on the power over, there's within the government structure, there's been safeguards against the majority having power over the minority, and that those safeguards are being eroded, and there's concern about that, as well as the minority having outsized power because of the senators, for example, that 4 million people have the same amount of representations as 40 million in California, and so there's sort of these inefficiencies in terms of the relative sense of power, but overall is this power over aspect of something needs to be done around that kind of a shift.
Yes, thank you for hearing me so well. You held on to all of that. I said a lot, and you got all of it. Thank you.
Okay, so I feel heard then. Okay, I'll speak to Evan. Yeah, I think that I'm kind of got inspired by Lou with the power over aspect. Something I've been becoming aware of, that on the political left kind of being more aware of sort of the establishment having this power over sort of quality that I'm sort of sensing. And so I've sort of been kind of more attuned to that recently.
Yeah, so you're feeling a little inspired by what Lou's talking about with the power over, and you've been feeling a sense of witnessing that in the establishment of the left.
And the way that this plays out is I talked to, our candidate for governor, who is now, governor-elect Gavin Newsom. So I was in an event and talked to him, and I said, hey, would you do an empathy circle, one of these that we're doing now, with John Cox, who's running for office? And he said, well, John Cox has no empathy. And then I said, well, would you do an empathy circle with him if he would? And he said, he's not going to do an empathy circle. And then I said, well, what if he would? I'll go check and get back to you. And I didn't get a commitment from him to say, yes, if he will do it, he would do it. And so, that was, just reaching out. So I got the okay from him. I did talk to his campaign manager, who also to Gavin Newsom's campaign manager, said, hey, would you do an empathy circle? And he said, no. And I said, why? Is it because you don't want to give John Cox attention? And he said, that's right. So they are using, and Gavin Newsom advocates for empathy. And I talked to his wife, Jennifer. And when I was talking to Gavin, she said, oh, my documentary is about empathy. So they're talking empathy, but then I say, will you do an empathy circle? I mean, really do something instead of this, just talking. And, so they're not really doing it. And I see that as sort of, and there's more, but I should reflect there first.
Yeah, for sure.
The essence of it, don't need all the.
Yeah, it sounds like you actually attempted to get an empathy circle going with the sort of the current governor-elect from the Liberal side with, John Cox, who he was sort of against. And you found that even though that they talk a lot about empathy, and even his wife was talking about doing a documentary about empathy, that it almost seems like the sort of the fight going on between the two sides and that whole portion of it actually won when it actually came down to it and trying to get an empathy circle going.
Exactly, because it's the power over aspect. That's how I'm kind of reading it. We need the power to do good things and forget empathy, even though we're for empathy, right? For dialogue. So there's an inconsistency where the power part is more important than the actual, kind of promoting the values, how I'm reading it. So.
Yeah, it's almost like there's just this inescapable power struggle going on that when it comes down to it just is more important. It seems more important to them.
Yeah, let's not give John Cox attention because we might lose the chance of getting, some votes, instead of, hey, this is empathy is important. This is a chance to model it, to the society. If they would have done an empathy circle together, they would have modeled it to so many people. It would have really gotten out there. It would have really, I think it would have affected the society. And then actually we were at Politicon in Los Angeles, and the John Cox campaign was there. And I went over and asked them, if they would do an empathy circle, and they moved it up the hierarchy, and they agreed to do it. They said that they would do an empathy circle with Gavin Newsom, and I just didn't, and it was just like at the very tail end. So it was like too late to, get everybody on board, but they were willing to do it. So anyway, it was like, but this was for me like a sense of sensing the power over. It's like it's more important that we get power than we have these dialogues. Maybe they don't understand what it really means, but still, I was really getting a sense of it there. And I have concerns about that.
Yeah, so it feels like almost like a missed opportunity to model empathy, and sort of the power over just kind of seemed to take over in that, and it was a missed opportunity because of that. And you even it was a missed opportunity to begin with, but then you actually go and speak to John Cox, and they ran it up the chain, and there was actually willingness there to do it. So just, yeah, that's rough.
Yeah, I feel heard. And oh, just one last thing. I didn't vote for either of them because don't do empathy circle. I'm not voting for you. So I feel heard. Thanks.
Okay, great. I'll select Lou.
Okay.
Man, this empathy circle is so great because I'm practicing listening like I've never done before, because I really have not done an empathy circle before. But it's also, I'm doing such a good job at staying away from thinking about what I want to say that when it gets to me, I don't have any thoughts.
So you're really enjoying this empathy circle because it's really giving you good practice. And you're also recognizing that when you are so focused really on just receiving the other person fully, that when it comes your time to express, you actually need a little bit of time to figure out what you want to say.
Exactly. Yeah, I think one thing that I was coming back to in my mind was that Trump got elected because there was a desire for him to be in power, and winning, no matter how many votes we win, and no matter how much the voter turnout increases, which is great, that desire doesn't go away just because we won votes. So how do we address that desire? And I think it keeps, for me, keeps coming back to NVC and empathy and a needs-based approach. I want to call it that a little bit too now, but just for marketing purposes. And I want I want to. The reason I say that is because I sometimes I get a lot of friction, so I'm just trying to find different phrases that might sink in with people. But just if we can identify needs and kind of like you were saying before, get into a negotiation, I think that's really important. Maybe I'll pause there.
So I think I'm understanding what you're saying is that Trump, you're acknowledging or recognizing that Trump got elected because a lot of people voted for him, and even though you're very happy to see like more people coming out in the midterm elections, there's still a lot of people that came out and voted on the right, and that represents all those people represent some kind of need that's out there that also needs to be filled. And how do we address that? How do those needs get heard and understood and met? And you mentioned NVC, which stands for nonviolent communication, and it sounds like you're looking for a way to talk about that, your desire to reach out to the other side and understand their needs. You're looking for a way to talk about that will be more attractive or more acceptable to the people that you're interacting with.
Yeah, exactly. I want to find a way to broach the subject, basically, and assist in any way I can to promote a needs-based approach that, step one, identifies needs of all parties, all the people we have to share the country with, let's say, and then step two, negotiate. I think those two steps are just so much more. If I can do something to promote those steps instead of what I witness in a lot of dialogues, which is arguing about all the philosophy behind everything and what's right and what's wrong. I just find that even in my own personal relationships, like with my girlfriend, for example, that if we argue about what's right and wrong, we can take weeks to solve an issue. But if we identify both our needs and then negotiate to find whether it's a middle ground or something that's even so creative, just spending time in those two steps, we can find such creativity that, whoa, I didn't even It's the whole thing I learned from like negotiation class in college. It's like, oh, there's like this example of an orange. Like, oh, I didn't even want the fruit inside. I just needed the peel. It's like, oh, we discovered that through, that process.
So I think what I'm hearing is you've actually learned from your own experience in your relationship that if you focus on kind of right and wrong thinking, like trying to argue about who's right and who's wrong and which position is better, you don't really get anywhere. But if instead you shift the focus to, well, what need are you having? Like, why is this important to you? Can you tell me like what value or what desire you have that you're trying to, and you do that also, that stimulates a lot of creativity, and often solutions emerge out of that nobody thought of before, and you'd like to figure out a way, again, to talk with the groups or the people that you would like to do political dialogue with, find a way to introduce that kind of focus to them and have them engage in that. Is that right?
Yeah, totally. I guess I'll add one tiny little piece just to wrap it up, which is that, if we can apply that to the country, let's say, what I do with my girlfriend, apply that to the country. We have so many resources to help each other. We haven't even begun to figure out how like, we haven't had it in my mind how I want to say it, but we have so many resources and we have no idea what to do with them because we haven't started discussing it.
So you'd love to figure out a way to apply that kind of thinking or that focus on a national level, because you think we have a huge amount of resource that's untapped because we don't have the right focus. Is that right?
Thank you. I feel fully heard.
I am moved hearing this conversation, and I agree with you. One of the teachings.
Who are you speaking to?
Oh, thank you, Edwin. See, I'm so moved, I'm not even thinking about that part of it. So Rick, would you reflect me back?
Yes.
Okay. So one of the teachings in nonviolent communication that I think is really important, actually, that applies to what Evan was talking about, is recognizing the difference between the need and the strategy that is pursued to meet the need. So the needs are basic human needs that all human beings have, like the need to be accepted, and the need for love, and the need for play, and the need for honesty, and the need for meaning. So those are kind of universal needs. I mean, this is what Marshall Rosenberg said. All people in all cultures have those needs. And that's certainly been validated by all of my experience of talking with people and working with people. And what's different, what creates culture, is the different ways that we try to meet those needs. So in some cultures, looking at someone in the eyes when you speak to them is a sign of respect. In other cultures, looking at them in the eyes is a sign of disrespect. Looking away is a sign of respect. So we do different things to meet the same needs. One person's need for play could be met by going to see a movie. Another person's need for play would be met by, thumb wrestling or, something else. And we get very identified with the strategy, the way that we try to meet the need. We get so identified with that we're not even aware of the need underneath it. And so what Evan was talking about is shifting that focus to, what is the need that I'm trying to meet by doing this? Like in the gun thing, both sides are trying to create safety. One is trying to create it by having more weapons, everyone carrying a weapon. That's their idea of how to create safety. The other one is, let's connect with each other and know each other more and understand each other and feel like we belong to a group. That's a way to create safety. So I said a lot there. I'll stop there.
Yeah. Well, I'm sensing that you've been feeling very moved around what Evan had articulated, and you described needs, human needs, that everybody has, and you pointed out very clearly that there's different strategies to try to meet those needs. And the last one that you pointed out was that, for example, the people who want more guns, they want safety, and people who want basically less guns, they want safety. And this is essential to see this pattern. It seems like you're pointing out.
Yes, thank you. And I particularly appreciate you hearing that I was moved, because that actually was very important to me, and I'm glad that you saw that. And I think that there was something that you reflected back about the human needs. Oh, yeah, and that seeing the needs in other people is the path to having compassion and empathy. Seeing the human being and not seeing like the behavior, oh, I hate this behavior, so I think this person is bad and I think they're evil, and I assign all kinds of evil intent to them. I'm not seeing them as a person. If I can see the needs underneath, so even the person who wants to have more guns, if I can see that they want safety, I can feel a little bit of a connection to them, because I want safety too. And I don't have to think of them as a monster, even though I might disagree with them. So it doesn't mean that I agree with them that guns, empathy does not mean agreeing, okay, so now I agree it's okay to have all these guns because, I'm seeing you as a human being. But I'm going to be more able to solve problems with someone if I see the need underneath what they are proposing. And I can empathize with that. The desire for safety. Yes, I want safety too. Let's talk about how to do that. Yeah, so I'll stop there.
Yeah. The way I'm hearing it is that it's so much more effective to identify the need. For example, the need for safety, the mutual need for safety. It's so much more effective because you could see the human being, and then you could not get lost in the specific strategy, which can create a lot of division. Is that?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you. I feel heard.
Okay. Cool. Edwin, would you like to reflect?
Yep. I'm taking notes too, but yeah.
Is it?
No,
yeah?
it's good. I'm good. That's it.
What inspires me is when I start to feel like visions of how it could be, and I got caught. Some of that got in me, and especially when you were describing your attempt to get the two politicians together, I thought of, oh my God, how I hate, sometimes I want to be informed, and I'll try to watch a debate like for local politics, and I can't even watch it, what comes to mind for me is, oh my God, it should be more like a full day event, a 3-day event where you really, not trying to one up the person or score a point, but really like we're talking about unraveling and attuning to the common need and seeing everyone seeing each other, and then discussing strategies that could be in place, like a longer, calmer process, rather than, oh, we only have 2 hours and you'd better, articulate yourself so amazingly. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
So from the conversation, it sounds like you're feeling inspired, and a lot of ideas are coming up. There's maybe a sense of excitement coming up, and you're seeing how when you watch a debate, just people having to articulate themselves really clearly, and it's very short, and that's just, you just can't even watch that because it's not kind of what you really envisioned, that you would like people getting together for an extended period of time, getting to know each other before they even go into developing some kind of strategies of what to do. And that's sort of your vision of like something, oh, this could be so much more effective, and maybe some excitement about that.
Yeah, that's it. I feel heard.
Oh,
good.
Okay, so I got 3 minutes. Wow. Okay, then I'll speak to Louis.
Yes, when I jumped up then, and I'm going to do it now, I'm letting either a cat or a dog in or out of my closed door. okay, because there's a litter box in it. So hang on.
Okay. Yeah, I had to jump up to close the door too. There was a bit of noise. So.
Yeah.
Hey, I could use a quick bathroom break, so I'm gonna take a minute.
The doglet wanted out, and the cat needed a bathroom break, and the litter's in here.
Okay.
All right, I'm ready.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so what is it? I'm sort of still back with the Gavin Newsom, John Cox, that sort of dynamic of taking what we're doing into the political realm. And Lou and I had reached out to my congressman, Mark DeSaulnier, here in Contra Costa County. And we had actually had a meeting with him, talked about empathy, and we're and trying to get an empathy circle with him going. But now that the election is over, I think we're going to try to reach out to him, see if we can have him and another congressman or Congress representative, I should say, on the right, and then for them to have an empathy circle online. So we're looking for how do we move what we're doing here, from the grassroots, kind of up the political hierarchy.
Cool. So I hear that you not only love doing this personally and interpersonally, but also want to take it to the political sphere and have our local representatives model how to have empathy circles. Fantastic.
Yeah, exactly. And that also the person who couldn't make it on the right, she's an organizer for the right. So she, holds rallies, and we've connected with some of the folks that hold rallies. So trying to move up to some of the leadership, that are on leaders on both sides to get them to take part. Is sort of another strategy to kind of move up the sort of the political hierarchy, the political activist hierarchy too.
Yeah. Great. I hear that even if they're not already elected officials, wherever they are leaders on the right, left, or different perspectives, you would like to get involved in having conversations like this with empathy.
Yeah, and also some kind of, maybe I'm inspired by Rick starting to strategize here with me into strategies. And the other one is to have a group like, everyone here seems like a real valuing of empathy and dialogue, and, we're getting sort of a facilitator group kind of going where we're all kind of learning these skills and then holding circles and starting to reproduce these empathy circles is another kind of a step as well that I'd like to work on.
So I hear, instead of just doing elected officials and then leaders, you want us all to get involved in doing this with as many other associates, friends as we can in personal settings.
And another idea I had is, the political right doesn't feel heard. They're kind of shut out of California politics. And I thought they might be interested in doing some demonstrations to call for empathy circles in Sacramento between the political left and right, because they would have a motivation for setting up camp, like an occupation on the Capitol's State Capitol Park and the steps were just last Sunday, and actually saying we're not leaving until the left and right have empathy circles with each other. So we can kind of align ourselves with whoever doesn't feel they have a voice. Then, so there's all kinds of different political strategies of how to bring the sides together, and, how to take sort of a nonviolent action to kind of foster those kind of dialogues.
I hear and feel that instead of just being frustrated by the minimal amount of that kind of conversation happening, you actually are pretty excited and foresee the positive benefit of getting all these differences to have these dialogues. And in a specific example here in California, I understand, I'm here in Berkeley, is that the right just isn't heard. It's whatever it is, 30% or something, but it's not heard. And you're hoping that the right would like to help set these up with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so so I got a lot of all kinds of bubbling strategies for sort of next steps, and
Great.
I do get kind of depressed too. Like, you know, organizing this was really hard. This circle is like a lot of work, and then trying to find people, and so I feel much more. I feel happy that everybody came here and that we're doing this. So I'm really grateful to you. Obviously, it's actually creating some. You know, I was getting depressed, and it's giving me some kind of energy and some hope. So thanks.
Great. I hear and feel that you feel positive that even just 5 of us is progress.
Yeah.
And that how much more you would like to get more involved at all levels of personal leadership.
Yeah, and I do want that point that your contribution is kind of your involvement has given me energy and, you know, gives me hope. So just
cool.
If you just say that last part, just want to.
That again, I continue to hear and feel that you feel positive and have hope, because the impact of even just a few of us doing this as well as we're doing it gives you hope that as hard as it was to make it happen, it has a positive benefit and therefore is worth doing.
Yep. Thank you, Hillary.
Great. Oh my God. You know, instead of running out of things to say, I've only written 5 different things now. So can we do another hour, please?
No, but maybe another circle. That might be, if other people are interested in that. But
okay.
we still have 15 minutes, so.
Okay. So, Lou, it's your turn to hear me.
Okay.
Okay. So, my God, I don't even know where to start. There's so many. And, but the first thing I learned, thanks for mirroring that I needed to learn it, was that mirroring back to each of you and withholding all the other things I wanted to say that were triggered by what you said is an endless learning for me. And I thank you for giving me just another bit of it. So now I will try all those things, or at least 1 or 2 of them.
Do you want me to reflect that piece back, or you just?
No, I feel that you hear me.
Okay. All right.
So instead of the smallest one, I'm going to take the biggest one for me that includes all the rest. And that is, it has to do with what's right and what's left again. Because for me, within my heart, soul, mind, body, and spirit, all of which are integrated parts of my wholeness, as one of the literal founders of diversity training in this country 36 years ago, and the only straight white male who was doing it then, because everything else was anti-ism and legal compliance. That's the way the Constitution was created. But there was no valuing of our diversity as gifts to one another, and that was too touchy-feely for them. And so I definitely did not speak about light and love and energy and spirit that I learned in my near-death experience. You can't repeat all this, I know. But so I had to get my MBA to learn how to sound like I look when I'm going to teach straight white male executives how to get light, love, energy, and spirit, okay? So
let me reflect back what
I think I just said. I better let you reflect that before I go further.
So I think what I'm hearing is you are celebrating that we are now in a time where the wholeness of who you are and your ability to celebrate all of the richness of diversity, that's something that you are using and bringing into diversity training and bringing into helping people understand each other. And that feels really good to you to be able to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And because, you know, I really, instead of doing it from compliance for you people, right, I love learning to do it for myself, that we each benefit from the ability to value our own internal diverse aspects and to be all we're capable of being in the body we're in. I mean, I love the line, the rest are taken. So the more we each try to be like one of the other 4 here, the more we fail. And except for stopping at stop signs and red lights or whatever, I love learning how to just be all the things I am and not allowing, that presumes I have the power, but valuing you each being all the things that you are. And I'm benefiting from X% of those differences toward whatever our common goal is. That is how I love living.
So let me see if I can reflect that back. So I think what I'm hearing is you are also celebrating and recognizing that teaching, particularly in this area of diversity, that teaching is a mutual process, that it isn't about one person who knows something teaching other people about themselves or about each other, but it's everybody learning from everybody about themselves, and that mutuality and that richness is something also that you just very deeply celebrate and love.
Right. Thank you. I feel heard. And a systemic version of that, not just the personal interpersonal, is that for me, you call it left or call it right, because I just call it integrated wholeness. For me, the greatest gift that this democracy, small d democracy, could possibly enable it to have, and the greatest gift that free enterprise and, yes, even unregulated capitalism could possibly benefit from, is to fully educate and keep healthy every diverse individual in our entire country, and thereby maximize all the human potential that we have, both as a democracy and as free enterprise. And that should not be considered socialist, you know, and it should almost be considered the self-interest of free democratic capitalists, you know. And yet, if I go out and sell myself to try to vote, either as a liberal Republican or a conservative Democrat or a capitalist, it's so hard for people to hear how, in my opinion, there is no conflict there. That's in the self-interest.
So let me see if I can reflect that back. I think what I'm hearing is you're saying that basic humanness of recognizing that we're all human and we all have our differences and we have our strengths and weaknesses and we have everything that makes us who we are in both heart, body, mind, and spirit, that wholeness, integrated wholeness and humanness. You would love to see that that awareness and that perspective adopted at a national level, at a global level, where people are just seeing each other in human beings and don't feel a need or a desire to label each other left, right, capitalist, socialist, all that, and that we're really just seeing the wholeness of everyone and how we're connected, and that we'd be, and to you that's as much socialism as it is capitalism, and that we would be we'd have a healthier world, and we'd all thrive more if we did that, something like that.
Yes, I feel so heard that next time I go do training or workshop or speech, will you please come and say that after I do say my words? Those are my words. Thank you. Do I have 20 more minutes or what?
Actually, you gave this time signal, yeah? Edwin?
I did, yeah.
Okay.
That was my joke. Okay. I'm done.
Yeah. So we have 10 more minutes, and I'm wondering, so I'm reflecting on now, should we just kind of bring this to a close rather than me, expressing it again, although I have a lot I'd like to say.
I'm glad, because it means everybody's going to be interested in doing more circles. Yeah.
So, and I was actually very moved by what you just said, Louis, what you shared about trying to see the wholeness in everyone and the connection. I think belonging is like one of the most important needs that people have, is a desire to belong to something, and to feel like they matter. And I guess I am talking now.
Yeah.
So, but maybe this could be, part of my summary, because so I think what I'd like to do as a way of closing this is to just go around and have people say just a little something about how they experienced this, and then maybe yeah, and then maybe when we stop, we could talk about if we want to do another circle another time. So yeah, so I think that's what I'm coming away with most strongly from this, is feeling connected to each of you, feeling like I actually got to know you a little bit, which feels really good. And my experience is that when people really share stuff that's important to them in a circle, that's what happens. And so I'm grateful for your participation and your honesty. And I'm grateful actually to be heard so much. I felt really, really heard, and that feels so good. So yeah, so that's me. So let's go around. Anyone can go next.
I can chime in, I guess. Yeah, I want to express a lot of gratefulness. Yeah, I really identified with what you just said, Lou, and yeah, it just feels so good to be heard. One thing that I was longing to come back to in all of this, I just had it on the tip of my tongue the whole time, I guess, was just like that I think one thing that can help bring us all together globally is at least the ending of helpless suffering. So, I mean, I think all suffering is sort of helpless, but at least helpless in the sense that when we all see it, at least it's easy. There's certain suffering that it's easy for everyone to agree that this is helpless suffering, and I think that's one thing that brings me hope that maybe that'll become part of the conversation at some point. I think we get lost in the polarization and all these political, social issues, but then there's just basic suffering that's still going on, and how we can hopefully end the gap in wealth and as part of that. But yeah, just wanted to draw attention to that one last thing on the tip of my tongue, and again express gratitude. This has been amazing.
I can go then. Yeah, this is really, I was a little disappointed that we didn't have the conservative, the person that was going to be here, but like I said, she's going to be here next week, so I'm excited about that. We weren't quite sure whether to hold this circle. I'm so glad we did. It's really, as I mentioned, energized me, and just to see the resonance with the sort of the message of the empathy circle message. I see the resonance in everyone here, so that's just very encouraging to see that. And so yeah, so grateful for everyone taking part, and so glad we did end up holding this circle. So that's it. Thanks.
Could go. Yeah. I feel like I'll be excited to reach out to people and invite them in, because I felt like it was a very good experience, and yeah, I do feel much closer to everyone here. And I really like what Lewis had just said, because he brought in the spiritual aspect of things, and that's what drives me as well, is this idea that we're all connected, and that it's better if everyone has it's better if everyone has enough so that they're not suffering. And it was interesting to hear it from his perspective, because you see that there's alignment where I wouldn't have expected there was. So I'm thankful in general. Thank you, Edwin, and Lou for holding this down and giving us the chance to come together. That's it.
You're muted.
You're muted, Lewis.
Oh, I
No, I was just telling Lewis started to talk, but he's muted.
Got it. I forgot. I pushed the button and it didn't work. So I agree. I love the energy that we each feel by doing this. And as I told you in the beginning, I do this regularly with livingroomconversations.org, that has exactly the same purpose and the same impact. The only difference is they intentionally say, I don't want to hear from you. I don't take the time to hear that I'm heard. And we don't want to hear talk back about how you agree or disagree. We just want to be heard. And in the limited 90 minutes, which I think should be 2 hours, that's all we can do. But still, the intention's the same and the impact's the same. I love doing this. I'm so glad you both created this. I would love to be part of this anytime you want. both personally in the Bay Area where I live, I'm in Berkeley, and or on this wonderful technology that enables us to do it all over the country. I love doing it. So whenever I'm free, I will be part of it with great pleasure. Thank you. And and I put in my email, lewis@griggs.com, in the chat. Either we can all do that, or you know how to email to us, or through Facebook, tell us all how to reach each other as you wish. But I'm in.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, everyone. So I think that brings this empathy circle to a close. Edwin, do you want to say anything in closing?
We're holding these ongoing. We're trying to ramp up. We're doing 1 or 2 a week, and hope more people will get involved, take part, and become facilitators as well. So we want to spread this, and so this is just the beginning, of it, and invite anyone watching or anyone taking part to get more involved in the facilitation too.
Yeah, so you can go to our Facebook page or to the Empathy Circle website and sign up for a dialogue.
Empathytent.com or empathycircle.com will get you there too.
Okay.
So.
All right. Thank you.